Hi everyone, welcome to Infidelity Chronicles channel that I'm excited to share a new story with you. My secret has a name, it's Jack. And the night our family broke, it didn't make a sound. It started with a whisper in a steamy bathroom, a plea I chose to answer, not with comfort, but with a fire that consumed us both, leaving behind the ashes of the life we once knew. I felt a tremor of uncertainty pass through me, but in that moment I knew this would not be the last time I answered his call. Your support is what allows these stories to be told. An overwhelming majority of our viewers, nearly 89%, have yet to subscribe. To ensure we can keep exploring the complexities of the human heart, we truly need your help. Please take a second to click that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what comes next. Now let me take you back to the beginning of the end. The choice I made in that bathroom, fueled by a potent cocktail of pity and a loneliness I hadn't let myself name, ignited an experience so intense, so perilously exhilarating it redefined the very meaning of my life. It began on a Thursday, thick with the damp chill of late autumn. The house, an old Victorian my husband Henry had inherited, was prone to settling with groans and sighs, sounds that usually filled the silence of my days. My stepson Jack had been home from his first year of college for the summer, but his presence was more of a whisper than a statement. At 19, he was a study in quiet intensity, a boy with the eyes of an old soul, burdened by a sensitivity that seemed too heavy for his slender frame. He was an aspiring musician, and the house was often filled with the melancholic strains of his acoustic guitar, though lately, even that had fallen silent. I had just come home, the quiet of the house pressing in on me. Henry Jack's father was in another city, closing another deal. His absences were frequent, leaving voids that I would busy myself trying to fill with chores, with gardening, with anything to fend off the echoing loneliness. Jack's car was in the driveway, but the house felt empty as I set my keys on the foyer table. I heard it, the soft, steady pulse of the shower running upstairs, a familiar routine. And yet something felt different, a tension in the air, a stillness that was heavier than mere quiet. I moved into the kitchen, the old floorboards creaking under my feet, and poured myself a glass of water, trying to dismiss the feeling. The evening stretched before me, a long, empty expanse. Later, as I ascended the grand winding staircase, the sound of the water was louder. It wasn't coming from Jack's bathroom at the end of the hall, but from the main guest bath, the one adjacent to my own bedroom. The ornate wooden door, which was almost always kept shut, was slightly ajar, a warm, humid light bleeding into the dim hallway. It was curiosity, a simple primal urge that drew me closer. I told myself I was just checking to make sure a pipe hadn't burst, but I knew on some deeper level that I was being pulled by that strange tension I'd felt earlier. I peered through the crack, and the sight that met my eyes made the air catch in my throat. Jack stood in the center of the room, a single white towel wrapped low around his SS. The shower had just stopped and steam ghost around him, clinging to the wide expanse of the antique mirror. He was staring at his own reflection, but his expression was one of profound anguish, as if he were looking at a stranger he despised. His shoulders were slumped and his hands were clenched into tight fists at his sides. He was no longer a boy, but he hadn't yet settled into the skin of a man. He was a beautiful, fractured thing, caught in a painful state of becoming. My breath hitched, and my foot shifted the floorboard beneath me. Let out a piercing cry. Jack's head snapped towards the door, his eyes wide and terrified, locking with mine. Panic flared across his face. "Emma," he breathed, his voice hoarse. He fumbled with his towel, his movements clumsy with shame, as if trying to hide his entire being from my view, didn't think anyone was home. "I'm sorry," I said, my own voice, a strained whisper. My cheeks burned. "I didn't mean to." I heard the noise. "It's nothing," he insisted, but his voice shook, betraying the lie. The tremor wasn't one of cold, but of a deep, resonant fear. Something was terribly wrong. I could see it in the taut line of his jaw, in the desperate way he avoided my gaze. My hand was on the doorknob, and every social instinct screamed at me to retreat, to murmur an apology and flee, granting him the illusion of privacy. But a stronger, more formidable impulse took hold, of fierce, almost maternal need to understand his pain, to soothe the raw terror in his eyes. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, closing it gently. Behind me, the click of the latch was deafening, a definitive sound that sealed us together in the warm, suffocating intimacy of the room. "Jack," I said softly, my voice finding a calm I didn't feel. "Whatever it is, you can tell me. I won't judge you. I'm here to help." He stared at me, his C****** T rising and falling rapidly. He looked down at the towel, his knuckles white. For a moment I was certain he would erect a wall of silence. But then a shuddering sigh escaped his lips, and he sank onto the edge of the clawfoot tub, his head falling into his hands. "I don't know what's wrong with me," he confessed, his words muffled by his palms. I leaned against the cool porcelain of the sink, keeping my distance. "There's nothing wrong with you," I said gently. "But if something is hurting you, talking about it can make it feel less heavy." He looked up, his eyes shadowed with a vulnerability that was heartbreaking. "It's my body," he stammered. "It doesn't feel like mine. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. It feels alien, wrong." The words came out in a torrent, a confession held back for far too long. His distress was palpable, a physical thing in the humid air between us. This was more than teenage angst. This was a profound crisis of self that must be incredibly frightening. I said, my heart aching for him, to feel like a stranger in your own skin. It takes immense courage to even voice that feeling. He shook his head, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. "It's not brave. It's pathetic. I can't even play my music anymore. It's like the notes are trapped inside me because I don't know who I am anymore to let them out." The connection between his identity crisis and his creative block was a poignant, painful revelation. He wasn't just lost, he was silenced. "Do you want me to help you?" The question left my lips before I had fully formed the thought. To figure this out, he looked at me, a flicker of desperate hope in his eyes. "How we can start," I said, my voice soft but firm, "by making you feel at home in your own body again. Right here, right now." The atmosphere in the room shifted, the air grew thick, charged with unspoken possibility as he hesitantly explained his anxieties, his hands shaking as he gestured vaguely toward himself. My role began to morph. I moved from confidant to something else entirely as I knelt before him. My initial intent was one of pure clinical reassurance, but as my hands made contact with his skin, a current, potent and undeniable, passed between us. My touch, meant to be soothing, became inquisitive. My fingers, meant to be comforting, began to explore. It was no longer about assuaging his fears. It was about learning his form, about mapping the territory of him in his absolute vulnerability. There was a strange and compelling power. I wasn't thinking about Henry. I wasn't thinking about right or wrong. I was thinking only of the fragile, beautiful boy in front of me and the profound, aching need he radiated. I found a rhythm, a slow, deliberate tempo that was less a physical act and more a silent form of communication. It was a forbidden melody composed in the steam and silence of the bathroom. My own body responded, a low coiling heat deep within me. I was answering a call I hadn't realized I'd been waiting to hear. I was no longer just his stepmother. I was his anchor, his confidant, his partner in this strange, terrifying discovery. And as the rhythm built, as his breathing grew ragged and his eyes fluttered shut, I knew with a chilling certainty that there was no going back. A line had been crossed, and the landscape of our lives was forever changed. When it was over, a profound stillness descended. The tension had not vanished, but transformed into a heavy, languid intimacy. Jack's breathing slowly returned to normal, and when he finally opened his eyes, he looked at me with an expression of such raw gratitude that it stole my breath. "Thank you." He whispered the words, imbued with a weight that went far beyond mere politeness. "I'm always here for you," I replied, my voice husky. I stood up, my own legs unsteady, and left him there, retreating to the solitude of my room. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic drumbeat of guilt, exhilaration, and terror. I had helped him, yes, but I had also taken something. We had created a secret, a moment of profound connection that could never be spoken of, a bond forged in the crucible of his deepest insecurity and my own hidden loneliness. The days that followed were a symphony of unspoken things. An electric awareness hummed between us. We moved through the house like dancers, in a complex choreography of avoidance and magnetic pull. I'd feel his eyes on me when my back was turned, and when our gazes would accidentally meet across the dinner table, a jolt would pass between us, a shared memory that was both a comfort and a curse. His guitar remained in its stand, untouched. The silence from his room was more telling than any sad song could ever be. The breaking point came nearly a week later. Henry was gone again. The house was submerged in a tense evening, quiet. I was in the living room pretending to read when Jack appeared in the doorway. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. My heart leaped. Of course. He walked into the room and stood before me, shifting his weight nervously. "What happened in the bathroom?" He began, struggling to find the words that helped for a little while, but I'm still blocked. I feel like there's something else I need to say. I waited my entire being focused on him. He took a deep breath. "I think the reason I can't play, the reason I feel so lost, it's connected to you." He finally looked at me, his eyes dark with a desperate sincerity. "I think I'm falling in love with you." The confession landed in the quiet room like a lit match. It was the sentence I had been subconsciously dreading and to my shame anticipating. This wasn't a teenage crush. This was the desperate cry of a drowning man confusing a lifeline with love. He had poured all his confusion, his hope, his search for identity into me. I should have stopped it. I should have been the adult gently explaining the complexities, the impossibility of it all. But looking at him so open and raw, all I could feel was the echo of my own profound emptiness. He saw me in a way Henry hadn't in years. "Jack," I whispered, my voice trembling. I saw the fear in his eyes, the expectation of rejection, and in that moment I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the one to push him away. An internal dam broke the loneliness, the desire, the thrill of our secret. It all washed over me in a tidal wave. I stood up, closed the distance between us, and silenced his fears with a kiss. It was not gentle. It was a collision, a desperate, hungry confirmation of everything that had been building between us. He responded with an intensity that mirrored my own, his hands tangling in my hair as he pulled me closer. It was a point of no return. Later I led him by the hand up the grand staircase, past Henry's empty study, past the silent portraits of his ancestors, and into the sanctuary of my bedroom. What happened next was not a seduction, it was a mutual surrender. It was the shattering of the last taboo, a frantic, desperate act of three lost souls trying to find themselves in one another. In the dim light of my room I saw not a boy, but a man full of a fierce, desperate passion, and in his eyes I knew he saw not his stepmother, but the only person in the world who understood the chaotic music of his soul. Afterward, as he slept soundly beside me, his body finally at peace, I lay awake, staring into the darkness. The silence of the house was different. Now it was no longer empty. It was filled with the weight of our secret. I had not fixed him. I had simply broken myself to match his pieces, and in the wreckage we had built something new. It was a fragile, terrifying, and beautiful thing. This bond between us, and I knew, as the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, that this secret was the new foundation of our lives, a truth that would hold us together and inevitably tear us apart. This complex web of love, need, and secrets is just one story of the human heart's most dangerous territories. If you were moved by this journey into the forbidden, you will not want to miss the other tales we have waiting for you. My story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like,